Hi there. I was just on the absolute craziest cruise ever. Oasis of the Seas, December 10th sailing 2024. We had 5 Alpha Alphas, 1 Oscar, a request for blood donations. We had to turn around and go back to land after 3.5 hours out from one of the ports, adding 7 hours to travel time. And when we got back for disembarkation, the port of Miami was closed for hours due to weather. I'm going to tell you all about it in just a minute. Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel. My name is Phyllis Milam, and my husband and I are full-time cruisers. That's right, we sold our house over 2 years ago, and we've moved onto the cruise ships. Thank you to the casino. All of our cruises are comped, and we have had an amazing time. But this last sailing, it was still amazing, but it just goes to show you that not every cruise goes exactly as planned. We really had some crazy situations, and this is just, I've seen lots of these situations, like one on this cruise, one on this cruise, one on this cruise, but to have so many on the same cruise was way out of the norm. So we left on a Sunday on the Oasis of the Seas, and we were headed out to sea, and everything was fine. And the very first call that I can recall, now I did not take notes as the cruise went by, but I'm pretty sure I remember the sequence of events. The very first night, they asked for blood donations. It's not the first time I've heard of this, and it's pretty amazing that even in the medical facility on the ship that they can even do infusions. I've heard the medical facility is fabulous. Thank goodness I don't have first experience with it. But what I feel like is weird, later on I found out that they were looking for blood for a female passenger. Yet over the loudspeaker, they were asking for male blood donors of O negative. Now, if any of you are in the medical field and can tell me why they specify male blood donors, I would love to know. It's not the first time I've heard that, and I'm curious every time why they specify female versus male for blood. And I will mention this along the lines of that. If you are a blood donor, you probably already know this, but carry your card with you, because they specify over the loudspeaker that they will only take blood from people that have the card for being blood donors. Mark and I are not blood donors right now, but it's something that when we get to land again, which is not until like 5 months from now, we are definitely going to look into this, because it's something we are very open to doing. If we have the blood that somebody needs and wants, we definitely want to help our fellow passengers. And by the way, I'm in the Facebook group for this particular sailing, and I have found out that the woman that needed the blood is A-okay, and she is fine. So we're very, very excited about that. We also had, throughout the sailing, in addition to the blood, that was not an alpha, that was just over the loudspeaker, a request for blood. We had 5 alphas that I heard on that sailing. Most were due to people falling down and getting hurt. One, unfortunately, was a heart attack victim. Good news, he's okay. I also found that out, so I don't mind sharing the story because he is okay. This is also not the first time I've ever heard that the best place if you're going to have a heart attack, if there is such a thing, is on a cruise ship, because they arrive very, very quickly to your cabin, and they bring paddles with them. And actually, when the medics arrived to the gentleman's, I think it was a guy, that I'm not even positive of, it might have been a woman, but I tend to remember that it was a guy. But anyway, they show up to the cabin, and he was actually not alive. They brought him back to life, and they stabilized his condition. We were in Falmouth, Jamaica at the time, and everything was great. He was in the medical facility, and we left Falmouth, and 3.5 hours later, something happened to his condition, and they decided we had to turn back around and bring him back to Falmouth to go into a hospital. Again, I've heard he's fine today. He and his family did disembark the ship in Falmouth, Jamaica, And so that put our ship 7 hours behind in travel time. And I'll talk about that again here in just a moment. Let's go ahead and jump, no pun intended, to the Oscar. Again, this person is fine. I don't mind talking about it. And it's actually quite a very unusual story. I did meet the family of this gentleman, and I didn't ask, but they told me all the information. So I'm going to share it with you all because it's nothing horrific or terrible. It was just, it is an Oscar though. So we were in Labadee, which is Royal Caribbean's private beach area. And coming back to the port, a gentleman was in a scooter, and he was on older gentleman, he was on particular medication that made him fall asleep like this, kind of like if you had narcolepsy. Well, it happened. He fell asleep at the wheel of his scooter and went overboard in between the pier and the ship. That in itself actually was quite a dangerous situation for the gentleman, because scooter and all, that scooter falls in with him. Older gentleman, they do think it knocked him out when he went in, so that's very dangerous. He was so lucky though, in that a couple of people behind him walking on the pier, one was a Navy SEAL, a retired Navy SEAL, and this gentleman did a lot of water rescues. So he didn't hesitate, jumped right in, as many crew members also jumped in. Together, they all saved this gentleman. He did suffer from a broken shoulder, but he is okay. A lot of people actually, when that Oscar went down, were thinking that it was a drill, but I knew it wasn't a drill because we had a drill when we were in Coco Cay. And when you hear the words Oscar, chills go, if you know what it means, all over. You get chills up and down your spine, because the last thing you want to hear is somebody going overboard, because potentially it is a very dangerous situation. We are so thrilled that this gentleman is okay today, and kudos to the Navy SEAL and all the crew that jumped in there and helped this gentleman. So I want to go back to leaving the port and then going back after 3.5 hours. The next day was a sea day, and then the day after we were due to be in port. So the captain had already announced that he was really going to speed up so that we can try to make it to port on time for everyone's disembarkation. You know, people fly, they have a lot of flights, and nobody wants to miss their flight. So he was really booking it. We were doing 21 to 22 knots the entire night. The next day, I would say it was about 2 or 3 o'clock when we got the notice that we were not going to make it to port on time. Royal Caribbean was very good to the passengers about this. Number one, giving them ample time to make other arrangements for changing their flights. For anyone that needed to change flights, they did give them free internet and free access to phones. They also gave them up to $200 per person for changing your airfare domestic flights, and up to $400 for international flights. Thank you, Royal Caribbean. It was Royal Caribbean that made the decision to go back after 3.5 hours, and which put us way behind schedule. They also had a lot of crew members lined up waiting to help people make new arrangements. I was very fortunate. I did not have any flights or anything. All I had to do was get off of the Oasis of the Seas and walk 20 minutes to the Celebration of the Seas, Royal Carnival's Celebration of the Seas out of Miami. So I was just changing ships. I was just hoping that I was going to make the all aboard, because on the Celebration, the all aboard was 3 o'clock. I needed to make sure that I was on that ship by 3 o'clock, or I was going to miss my sailing. Mark was already there, and he was going to help me move my luggage over. It's really hard to find an Uber just to take you from one terminal to the next. So my issue was just trying to make the ship. Fast forward overnight, so we're booking. Then in the morning, all of a sudden, the ship stops and we're just floating out to sea. And we got an announcement. The port of Miami was closed due to weather. So we were not going to arrive at port until the terminal or the whole port opened. And that wasn't just our ship, that was all the ships out there. Now, I will tell you, Mark was on the Celebration, and he had no idea any of this was going on until I told him it was going on. And then they started making announcements on his ship. But again, it was all very last minute. And unfortunately, the people on the other ships didn't have time to prepare for anything like new flights and such. We had other circumstances which allowed our passengers on the Oasis to make new arrangements. But I've really felt sorry for the people that were on. Let's see what ships were out there. There was an NCL ship. There was the Celebration. There was the Grandeur of the Seas. There was the Carnival Horizon and the Virgin Scarlet Lady. So I don't know what happened with those passengers now and how it was handled on those ships, but our ship was already taken care of. So this Royal Caribbean's Oasis of the Seas was the first ship to go into port once it opened, and we docked at about 10 a.m. Celebration was the very last ship to dock, and Mark was the first person off the ship, and he didn't get off the ship until 2:20 in the afternoon. Now, what happens now with the people getting on the ship for the next sailing? Boy, did that make things crazy. As I mentioned, I was getting on the Celebration. So Mark came and picked me up. He got to me at about 3:15. We got to the port. We walked to the 20 minutes to the Celebration. I was getting text messages and phone calls from Carnival. They're so good about that, to be honest. I was getting phone calls and text messages, keeping me updated on what's going on because I was a passenger for that day. All aboard was not until 10 p.m. and we did not leave the Port of Miami until 11 p.m. that night. That was the very first sailing I've ever been on where I didn't get my luggage until after midnight. Thank goodness, I had decent clothes that I was wearing because we went out to dinner. We went to the casino, started gambling it up already, but what a crazy, crazy day. So that's a wrap. That is our craziness for those cruises. If you were on this ship, I would love to hear from you what your thoughts were about all the shenanigans that week. I hope the next sailings are smooth going. Until next time, folks, bon voyage.